Warning: the following podcast has been rated listener R due to strong language, violent situations, drug references, sexual innuendos, and who knows what else. Listener discretion is advised. With that being said, hang on, sugar tits, because we're about to get wobbled.
What is going on, guys? It's Clayton Wobble Elliott back with another episode of the Let's Get Wobbled podcast. This is episode 9. And I'm telling you guys, this is something super special to me because I'm not sitting down with somebody doing a one-on-one interview. Using the new equipment that I've been talking about, the new software, I am recording with a guy that I met in Cleveland, but he lives in Canada. We're 3 time zones different from each other. So this is like a super big thing for me. It's one of the first for the Let's Get Wobbled podcast. It's also first for me. But I want to introduce you guys to Erik. What's going on, buddy?
Hey, buddy. I was going to lie to everybody and be like, hey, thanks for flying me out, putting me up.
So that's what I need to start doing. I need to start bringing guests in, and then I'll write it off as a tax write-off.
Right, there you go.
Like, oh, listen, like I needed to fly this guest in, and like I had to pay for somebody to get him from the airport and shit. Just write all that shit off for my taxes. So introduce yourself to everybody that listens. Tell them just a little bit about yourself, and not only yourself as a person, but also how you're tied in with public safety.
Okay, so my name's Erik. I live in a smaller town outside of Vancouver, British Columbia. I'm like a half hour away. It's like a suburb almost. But anyways, yeah, so Vancouver, British Columbia. Outside, or who I am, what do I do? I work for the border. So I work for the Canada Border Services Agency. It's like the US CBP version. So I'm the dude in the booth that's asking all you Americans about guns all the time. Except for now, that's how I started. Now I deal with strictly just commercial traffic. So all the semis and, well, actually all semi trucks. That's what I do now.
I didn't know. I think you and I had talked about that before, and you said you went commercial. So do you have to open every load that goes through and check it and process it, or are you able to talk about that at all?
So the way that commercial works for Canada is any truck coming up into Canada or anything being imported, it gets declared electronically through a broker like a minimum of an hour before it gets to us. So in that hour, it gets reviewed by like a bunch of different departments. So like agriculture, food inspection agency, Health Canada, us as well. Like, and we look at everything like, what is it? Who's selling it? Who's buying it? What's the truck? Who's driving that truck? Is it subcontracted? How far are they coming? All that stuff. And then from there, like there's a bunch of people that work on that list, like that go through every one of those. If they have any kind of concerns or if they have any questions, they'll kind of like make notes for us out in the booth, or they'll flag it or whatever. When the truck pulls up, then we have our questions. Like we have our mandatory legal requirement questions that we have to ask, that we ask every car, every truck that crosses the border. And then from there, we also have like it's pretty much just a conversation that we have now at this point that you kind of just work your way through. Then you find out about their trip, where they went, how long they were gone, what they brought down, where they stopped, what their load is, all that other kind of stuff. Does the distance they went, the time they've been gone, does that all make sense to me? Which is a steep learning curve to find out about America, I guess.
So and that's then what, granted, I know, like, obviously it's different, but with some of the things that I do through work too, I've found it being super hard to, like, you're doing an interview basically with somebody, or you're interrogating, and you have to get a feel for, like, obviously you can tell when somebody's blatantly lying to you. But man. having to learn how to put their story together and see if it makes sense for you, and when to call people when they're bullshit. Like, that was extremely hard for me to fit those pieces together. And like, it's more than just talking back and forth to somebody. It's an actual like interrogation / interview kind of thing.
It is. And it's a skill that's learned from experience. And it's definitely not something that I know how, or I know that can be taught. Like, it's something that you learn to do. And you learn to do it by, like, so when I was new, I used to ask a bunch of stupid questions that made no sense, that were completely irrelevant, just to like learn. Like, as I'm like, I'm just going to start asking people who bought or when they bought their vehicle. And then I realized that it doesn't make a difference, right? So you kind of, you try new things and you kind of figure out your way through it. And yeah, like I definitely enjoyed dealing with people. And I'm very happy that I started my job there dealing with people before I moved to commercial, because commercial, it's all about the truck. It's not as much about the person, because the person coming in is coming in to deliver a load. They can be here. Or it's a Canadian coming back with a load and they can be here. So it's a lot less about the person and more about what's in the truck or what's in the trailer.
Right. Have you had any big, like, are you able to talk about, like, have you had a big bust in commercial that you were a part of?
Not that I've been a part of, but there's two, let's call them the two largest commercial ports in Canada. One's out in Ontario, one's where I work. And it's, I don't want to say it's a battle. It definitely isn't, but it's between these two ports that have the largest load of drugs that have been seized or that have been found, right? So last year, in I think it was January, December, we had was 380 something kilos of meth in a load. Shit. Yeah, huge. And then recently this year, there was one, I don't know the number, but I know it was larger than our number. So like, that's what we think about. We're like, oh, well, Ontario is where the other port is. We're like, Ontario has the highest number right now for Canada. And that was some point this year. But like, there's drugs crossing all the time. We know that. It's just finding it, right? And it's a needle in a haystack. And our border, the one I work at, is the only one in the country that has it's an X-ray machine for semi-trucks. So a whole truck will pull right into the building, and we have a giant X-ray that goes over the entire truck. We can see everything. Yeah, it's pretty cool. But like you asked, like, do we search every truck? Like, we can't. We So like, we only ever do like a 1 hour shift at a time in the booth, because you just get burnt out so quick. And then you rotate through, and like, you'll probably do 3 or 4 times in the booth on a shift, because our shifts are like 11 hours. So in that hour, I probably process 50, 60 trucks. Well, 50 trucks, maybe 40, 50 trucks, something like that. So like, we can't search every one of them, right?
Right. Yeah, that's one a minute. You're averaging a truck a minute. That's wild.
Yeah, it's about that. And I think the longest part of that time is the truck coming up, stopping, turning the truck off, and like handing over paperwork. We do a little interview, and then giving it back to him starting the truck, moving out of the way for the next one, right? Like, that's probably what takes the most time, is just the truck moving around. But yeah.
So we know who you are as a public safety official. Tell us a little bit more about yourself, because I mean, that's like you said, you and I kind of know each other, but we don't know each other. We just met at Cleveland and spent a little bit of time together. So do you have any siblings? I know you said you had a wife. Do you want to talk about her at all?
Yeah. So it's actually funny. Something I actually really appreciate about this podcast is I learned a lot about Playboy on this podcast, which I've known him for a few years, but I don't know about him, which is pretty cool. So I'm happy for that part of this. So I grew up in the prairies. Just above North Dakota is a province called Manitoba. I grew up there, about an hour from the border. I moved to British Columbia in 2017 for this job. I have 3 sisters, and an older sister and 2 younger sisters. My older sister, married, has kids, lives in Winnipeg. And my 2 younger sisters, one's on her own. The other one is married with 2 kids, and they live in Denmark. So my mom's from Denmark, my dad's from Winnipeg. They split up in like 2004. And then my mom and my 2 younger sisters moved to Denmark, and they've lived there ever since.
Okay.
Yeah. I am engaged. I call her the wife, but
she has a fiance. I know you call her the wife all the time, so I just assumed you guys were already married.
Yeah, pretty much. We live together. Our wedding is September of next year, so I'm pretty excited for that.
Nice.
She's pretty great. Like, I mean, I'm 38 years old. I've had relationships in the past. I was married at one point. Like, I definitely know what I won't deal with, and she is all except for those things, and it's pretty great.
Well, let me just say, I didn't even know your age until you told me right now, and you definitely don't look 38. You definitely look way younger than what you could be. So let your fiance know that if things don't work out, I will take you in.
Right? I don't act like I'm 38 either, so.
That's crazy. I don't know if that just never come up between me and Playboy or not, but
I don't know if
I
didn't
know
either.
that at all. He may not. He might find out.
We don't really talk about age. Like I know,
no,
I know
really.
Baker's like 12 years old.
Yeah, he looks like it anyway.
Right, but like I don't think I know. Sure. I don't know. I don't think it never really comes up. Like I don't know how old anybody that I've met in Cleveland is really.
So
it's not really
the podcast you might have picked up. I'm 27. I just turned 27 August 1st.
I knew it was your birthday. I messaged you, but I didn't know how old you turned. I was just like, "Hey, happy birthday!"
Yep. 27. I know. I feel older than shit, but I look older too. A lot of people tell me that, but I've been shaving my head since I was
I think that
in high school.
That makes a big difference. If I shave my beard, I look like 10 years younger than I already do.
No, I've got a really bad hairline on both sides of my family, and I continue to shave my head, and I have for years. So we've heard a little bit about yourself. Obviously, you and I kind of met in Cleveland, but we share an interest in motorcycles. So I want you to kind of talk about what sparked your interest in motorcycles and how you got into that. And then you also just took a fucking huge ass ride that I want you to talk about too.
Yeah. So I always wanted one because motorcycles are cool, right? You're a kid, dude, love motorcycles. I've always wanted like a crotch rocket type motorcycle, but for good reason. But you know, my ex-wife was like, "No, you'll kill yourself," which is true. I do dumb stuff with it for sure. And like even now, I kind of want to get one just to like see what it's like. But I know I'm going to go way faster than I need to, and I'll probably hurt myself. So I'd rather not. But so I've always wanted one. And when I met Alicia, that's my wife's name, fiance. So her dad has a motorcycle. He had 2 at the time. And I was like, "Oh, I've always wanted one." Whatever. He's like, "Well, you should get one." And I was like, "You know what? I should. I'm an adult. I make adult money. Why not buy a bike?" So I bought a Virago. It was at like a motorcycle shop that he was bringing his bike to get work done. It was in their showroom, I guess, or whatever. And the guy that owned the shop had built it, told me about it. I loved the color, so I bought it. It was very heavily modified, and it let me down too many times where I stopped wanting to use it because I'm like, I'm headed to work, but if I don't make it, then I'm going to be late. So I'll just take the car, right? Or take the truck or whatever. So I sold that. And then now I ride a Suzuki Intruder, which I absolutely love. Love that bike.
I started off on a Yamaha V-Star is what I owned before I got my my grandpa's Harley. When he passed away, he left to me. But it was funny, and I've told this story before, but I called my grandpa up. We worked together at the time, and we had just gotten off work, and I said, "Hey, there's a motorcycle just down the road from me for sale. I'd like you to come look at it with me if you can." He's like, "Yeah, I'll come over and look at it with you." So we check out this 650 V-Star. Nice light bike, something easy to start off and learning, because I never rode a dirt bike as a kid. It was just, I just wanted to, like you said, owning a motorcycle is cool. It's what you do. You just ride a bike. And my dad, my grandpa both had owned bikes, and I've ridden on the back of them before. And I was like, it can't be that hard to figure out. Like, we'll get it figured out. But so I get the money. I buy the bike after me and my grandpa look at it. And it's the middle of February, maybe beginning of March. So it's still extremely cold, especially for Ohio. And I told my grandpa, I'm like, "Hey, can you ride this back to the house for me?" He's like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "Well, like, I don't have a way to get it back to the house, and I've never been on a motorcycle before. I've never ridden."
Well, that's how you learn.
Well, I didn't have an endorsement or anything, but anyway, he jumped on the bike for me, and he took it down to my place, which was only a couple minutes down the road. But I had to laugh about it. But we share that story now, and like I said, that when he passed away, he left me his Road King. So that's what I've been riding for.
That's the bike you brought to Cleveland?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, it's a gorgeous bike. Yeah, it's cool that you have like a bike that has a meaning for you. You know.
Right. Yeah. And I haven't done anything to that bike other than I put bigger bars on it because I'm a bigger guy, and I sit up a little taller than what my grandpa did. So I put 14-inch bars on it, the Bluetooth speakers, and the slip-on pipes. Other than that, that bike is stock just the way he had it.
That's cool. That's super cool.
And it's probably got 40. I think when I just got off of it when we come back from Michigan, I think it's at 42,000 miles now.
Oh wow! No wow.
What year? It's been around. 09. I love that bike, and me and my girlfriend have both talked, because her and I are both bigger people, but we've talked about getting something a little bit bigger. That way her and I can both fit on it comfortably, especially when we take longer rides and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, there's no way I can get rid of this bike. I can't trade it in. I'm not going to, so it's going to be a bike that I'll have forever. And
yeah,
if we eventually want to get a different bike, that's fine. We'll finance it and we'll get a bike without a trade. But I just told her,
then
I was
you can just get like a bike that's like the you guys bike for touring and having fun or whatever. And then you've got your bike for the club and
right.
Yeah. Your solo bike.
So how did you hear about the Cleveland Peace Officer Memorial? How did you start getting into that groove of going?
So Jeff. So Jeff, I met him in the academy where you go to learn how to do my job, right? So like the CBSA Academy, it's out in Quebec. I didn't know him before. He lived in Vancouver. He'd moved here maybe a year or so beforehand from Ontario. We were in the same class and we were seated like right across from each other. So the cool thing about our agency, the way they hire people, is you need no law enforcement background. You need no specific education. You need there's nothing. So we've had school teachers in my class. We had people straight out of university. We've got high school teachers or elementary school teachers, like all walks of life. The reason I find that really interesting is because they teach you your job, which is great. But then everybody kind of brings something from them into that mix, right? So like at work, so I was military. I don't know if you knew that. I was military for like 18 years. I got in 2004 and I got out in 2021. So when people cross the border and it's anything military related, when I started, everybody just passed the exam off to me because I know what I'm talking about and I know what I'm looking at, right? Like looking at a U.S. military person's orders, like where their directions or their orders, to anybody else makes no sense. And I know it makes sense what I'm looking at, right? And I can kind of talk the talk, which puts that person at a disadvantage because lying doesn't make sense. It's harder to lie to somebody who knows what they're talking about, right?
Sure.
So we're sitting in class and Jeff used to work bylaw in Ontario and then for Vancouver. So we're sitting in class and like we were talking about whatever, and then like he had said something or I said something that just triggered the other person and be like, okay, this person has a history in something law enforcement related. And so we talked on like one of our first days on one of our breaks, like, what'd you do before? And then we sort of got to talking and we're like, hey, we'll stick together because we have half an idea of what's going on. Next to like the school teacher that's like, well, why are we asking them where they live? And we're like, come on, man, like, catch up, right? Like, so college for us was actually, I don't want to say easy. It's definitely not easy, but it was a lot easier than for some people. Like we have a high fail rate, not a high fail rate, but there's a fail rate, right? And like, it's very low tolerances for your grades and like what you do and how well you progress. That for us that was never an issue. So that's where I met Jeff. So our first year we were there until I want to say June. So May comes up and he keeps talking about this. He's going to Cleveland. There's all these cops that go there. You know, there's FBI and there's all these like. He's just talking this thing up like it's like Disneyland. So we're like we kind of make fun of him because he kind of is a little bit dramatic at times, and so he's explaining this Cleveland thing, and he's like, when I show up, he's like, I fly in the morning, I get picked up, and like a police car shows up with their lights on. They jump in, they give me shots of Jameson. We go out, we drink all day, right? And it's just this big story. And I'm like, we're like, okay, Jeff, like you don't know FBI people, you don't know Homeland Security, you don't know cops and like the motorcycle club and all. Anyways, we just make fun of him. So he wanted to go, and we're like, yeah, let's all go. Like, let's see this just blow up in his face, so we can make fun of him some more. The weekend of Memorial, this was 2017. The weekend of Memorial was the weekend we found out what port we're going to. It's like where you're going to get placed. So he couldn't go, none of us could. Jeff and I obviously, it's the only year minus COVID. It's the only year Jeff has missed in like 15 years or something like that. He's been going forever. So the next year, anyways, he's been talking it. We're still making fun of him. May comes around, so 2018 was the first year I went, and of course, we show up. We land in Cleveland. We flew direct from Seattle. We land in Cleveland, and Bobby Schwab, the guy that runs the FOP, the Fraternity Order of the Police, solid dude. Love that guy so much. We're standing in front of the airport, and of course, this like blacked out undercover car comes with all these lights going, and he parks like a dick, gets out, gives us all these hugs, pulls we bring our bags to the trunk. He's like, "Put your bags down." We're like, "No, man, I'll get my own bag." He's like, "Put it down," and then he pulls out this bottle of Jameson, and we're doing shots. It's like 6 a.m. We took a red eye to get there, and we're doing shots behind this car with these lights on at the Cleveland airport. And I was just like, okay, maybe Jeff might have a thing or two, right? That maybe he's not lying, and maybe he's not full of shit. So that was my introduction to Cleveland. And then I met, everybody with the Warthogs. That year was probably the biggest year. And you mentioned it, kind of touched on it after Memorial this year, when you had the podcast for it. It's just like a different feeling when you're there. So my first year, I was a little bit on guard, obviously. I don't know any of these people, right? Bunch of biker guys with these cuts. They're probably bad dudes, right? Like all the stereotypes. So I was kind of like responsible and still watching myself, whatever. Then I guess probably after the major, like a Saturday, like the big night, I kind of realized like where I am, what this is, who these people are, learned about people, right? Got introduced, and then started to make friends. So I was like, cool. The next year I went there, I let it all go. Like Cleveland to me is like going into a bar that you work at. Like everybody's got your back. Everybody there, like the group you're with, everybody knows you, and you watch out for each other. So my second year, it was off the rail. Like I did everything I could, and I had a ton of fun, but drank way too much. But it was just, I had completely let go. So now I just don't do shots while I'm in Cleveland, because that's my little trigger for that. I know better now, but yeah, that's it. Like that's how I got into going to Memorial, and it would be, aside from my own country saying I'm not allowed to come back to the country if I leave, it's the only thing that's ever going to stop me from ever going again.
And that's what I told Playboy too, and I'm sure you've heard the story too. When I went up, of course, like Cody and Corey both are hyping this up. They're like, "Man, you've got to go. It's a lot of fun." And I'm like, "Okay, I'll try to go this year." I had just gotten some seniority where I could take some time off work, and they're like, "Yeah, you gotta schedule it." And Playboy's even like, "I'll even split a room with you, so that way it's not super expensive." And he said, "We'll just hang out and have a good time." So I take it off, and he's hyping these Canadians up just every time we talk about it. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. And like I said, I knew we had Canadian guys in the club, but that's who I expected to see when we pulled up. And I'll never forget, like, we ride all the way up to Cleveland. So it's probably like a 3.5 hour ride for us.
So nice.
We get up, we park in the parking garage. I come out, and like, of course, Scout and Cody, Corey, Half Stick, they're all just talking with you guys and hugging around and shit. And I was like, okay, these guys are cool. Like, they must obviously know them. And then Playboy introduced me to you guys, and I was like, are these the Canadians you were talking about? He's like, yeah. I was like, oh, okay. I didn't know you guys were part of the club. He's like, no, they're not. He said, they're fucking Canadians that come down every year.
They're just,
and I'm like, how did you get hooked up with these guys? And I can't even remember how he said you guys got hooked up. I don't know if it was through the club somehow that you knew somebody, or.
I think Jeff used to go down with the Ottawa police. And I think that's how he met Bobby. I don't know. You're gonna have to have Jeff on and explain how he got into it.
It's crazy how all these connections have weaved themselves together, and how like close you and I have even become just from meeting each other through a 4-day weekend.
Yeah, we have
you know what I mean?
We have like a 60-something day Snapchat streak.
Yeah. Just from meeting you. And I told you, I was like, we're going to keep it together until we see each other again in Cleveland next year. Because it's like you said, unless there's something wrong with my body that will not physically let me go up to Cleveland, or some reason that I can't go, that I can't be there.
Yeah.
But I had a blast, and Playboy's like, man, we're going to I'm going to tell somebody and try to get somebody new every time to go up. And we have so many different Cleveland chapters up there. I'm surprised more guys don't show up for even just one night. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, like the entire purpose of Cleveland is the memorial, right? That's why it's there. Like that's why we go there. So it's great. Like it's become going there for that, but then I also get to see all you guys, right? And like I think it's sharing what I love about Cleveland now is the memorial is a big part of it. Like with the military time, and like I was military police when I was in the military, right? So like memorial means a little bit to me, and but then I get to see all you guys too, which has just made that trip out there even more reason to go and reason to stay. So like for us, we go there for like 5 days because it doesn't make sense otherwise. And we all share a room to keep the cost down. We take not 2 years ago we drove from Toronto down just because or Toronto or Ottawa, one of them, just because it was cheaper. It was only like a 4-hour drive from Ottawa, but we still had to fly there.
Okay,
right?
I guess it wasn't that bad then.
Yeah, so but like it's short of COVID, I've gone every single time. And COVID is only because our genius government said if you leave you can't come back. So
which is crazy.
They had some crazy rules. It was so dumb.
This year for Memorial is going to be the 40th anniversary of the Cleveland Memorial.
Yeah, I'm hoping that's what it'll make it huge again. We were talking earlier, like just before this all started, is that I noticed a difference from like 2018 to this year, right? I noticed that this year was a little bit busier than last year. So I'm thinking that the year after COVID, a lot of people were still skeptical, right? Like didn't want to go out. And then there was also a very anti-police everywhere. So especially in the US. So that was a really like low admittance or low attendance year. Last year was a little bit better, and this year was better. Like I noticed that this year was better, but it definitely wasn't like 2018. So I'm hoping that the 40-year anniversary will bring a lot of those people back.
I hope it will too, because like the way you described Cleveland is, granted, it's the same thing. Like I said, you have those somber moments, and you remember the people that have come before us, but at the same time, it's a celebration of life. And the way you described this celebration that used to happen back then was way different than what it is today.
Yeah. But then I also get to like celebrate seeing you guys and like that bond that we have, as well as like
and that's
making that bond with the memorial itself.
We talked about it too. He's like, that's it's Cleveland Memorial, so like you said, it's a police officer memorial. It's good to go do anyways. But B, it's hanging out with you guys too and spending that time with you guys. That's the only time we get to see each other, and that's like our spring like kickstart to the motorcycle season. It's just warm enough we can get the bikes out and be in some reliable warm weather and still go and hang out and everything. So it's like our first big event of the year that they try to make anyways. So like I said, I will continue to go for as long as I can.
And that's May. Like May's a very unpredictable weather.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we got poured on the rain when we did the parade this year.
Yeah. But like both, from my understanding, most years, the drive to and the drive home, the ones that are like the longest and matter the most, or that are make it the most uncomfortable, have been good weather, which is great. Right. And then like I think it was last year, it rained like the entire time I was there. I used to bring shorts, and then like last year and this year, I wore pants the entire time. It was cold, man. Well, I found it cold at least.
It wasn't bad. It was, well, then again too, you're clear over on the West Coast too, aren't you?
Yeah.
So you're like
right above Seattle. I'm like 3 hours north of Seattle.
So you're used to warmer weather most of the year, I'm assuming?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Then I grew up in the prairies where we have snow in May. So I don't know.
Right.
I get why Cleveland's cold, but it's just, this year rained, and at least, it made it a little bit more somber, which
I think, yeah. And that was what me and the guys talked about too, because this was my first year going. So Half Stick's like, you got to do the memorial. And if you remember, that was the night before I got real sick, and I was like, man, I don't want to fucking do this at all. And we're in the parade, we're doing it. It's already like pouring on us in the parade, and Half Stick pulls off to do the ceremony or whatever, and they ask me like, you going over with him? And I'm like, fuck, I really don't want to, but like, this is my first year, so I feel like I need to do it for my first year and stand and pay my respects and shit. So I did, and it wasn't horrible. It just rained the entire time, like you said. And then I get back to the hotel, and everybody else is rested up. They're changed into dry clothes. They're good. And they're like, hey, let's go. We're going to this pizza place. You got to get get dressed. Let's go. And I'm like, fuck, I just got out of the rain. I'd really like to put some fresh clothes on and lay down for a second. But like, all right, I guess we're going again.
No, there's no time to lay down in Cleveland.
No, Playboy got super mad at me because I did, like, through the day I would take a nap because just the way my work schedule is, like, if I want to stay up late, I got to sleep in late. But
right,
he told me, he's like, you got to knock the fucking nap and shit off, dude. It ain't for fucking Cleveland, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I'll try to do better at it next time. We'll meet you. I'll be more prepared, try to take less naps and spend more time with you guys.
What's like Playboy is saying is like when the Canadians come out, they just do is party, right? But like for us, like, you had asked him the question in a, I'll need to find out, you know, like why, right? So for you guys go for the memorial. It's like 3 days. I think you're gone for 3 days, right? 2 nights.
I think we do. We get Thursday and get there Thursday and leave Sunday. Right. So it's technically 4, but really we do 3 nights.
Yeah. So for us, like, it's not a vacation. I don't want to say the word vacation, but it is. Like, for us, it's an escape. Exactly. Like, I've got 6 days off of work. I'm hanging out with a bunch of people I only see once a year, right? Like, I want to have as much fun as I can. Like, let's make this memorable. Let's have some fun. And then Jeff's, he's a couple years older than me. I think he's 3 years older than me, which I don't know if you knew that, but I think he's like 41.
Didn't know that either, because nothing against Jeff, but he looks older than that.
Well, it's because he's bald.
Right.
Shaves his head and adds 10 years or whatever, right? So
must be.
But Jeff wants to nap, and, you know, if he doesn't want to do something, he won't do it and whatever. So whenever I'm there, like when I go to Cleveland, at least, like, I don't want to sit in a hotel.
That's what it was. We had said that you're the life of the party. If it wasn't for
that's what it was. Right.
Yeah.
But it's like, and that's why, is because, like, I don't want to sit in a hotel. And, like, nothing against the hotel we stay at, but they haven't. I'm shocked that they cleaned since 2018. Like, it's gone downhill, the hotel we stay at, and I don't want to, like, blast them. It was super nice when we were there. It's okay, like, but it's like, if you start look next year, you'll start noticing, and the year after that, you'll probably start noticing. Like, it's fine for what they charge us. Right. It should be better, I think, but whatever. Like, I have no reason. Like, what I'm gonna do? Sit there and watch TV, like, or take a nap? Like, it's not me. I'm not a nap person. I'll just go and short sleep myself. I'm only there for 5 days. I'll pay for it when I get home. But yeah, so, like, I don't want to sit at home. So, like, if anybody's doing anything, like, I'll go. Like, if it doesn't sound like the funnest time, whatever, I'll go, because maybe it will be fun. I don't know, right?
Right. And that's like me. Like, me and Corey talked about it too. I'll talk, and I'm somewhat of a social butterfly when it comes to people that I know and shit like that. But once we warmed up to each other, it was great. And I had a great time the entire time I was in Cleveland. But I told him, I'm like, I'm not the kind of person that would even consider going to a karaoke bar, period. Like, that's just not my kind of crowd. I like drinking with my dudes, smoking cigars and shit. And then the next thing you know, we're at Tina's and just fucking shutting this fucking place down. And I had a blast anyways. But
right? I can't remember. I can't remember who it was that brought us there. I think there was a random group of people, probably some random girls that were with us, that were like, we're going to the karaoke bar. And then I think it was Baker's first time going too, because he always was the same thing. He's a big tough guy, big hard shell exterior dude, right? Big softy at heart, but he's always gonna hear that too. That's okay, he knows it. But he had a good time, right? Like, everybody had a good time, and, like, we'd go with Rachel, so she'd come. So before, like, last year, for example, it'd be like the 4 Canadians, we'd all go, and then Rachel would come, and, like, maybe one random person from the zone car, and we'd go over to Tina's and just have a great time. Everybody there, it's a weird mix that's in that place. It's like
for that, sure. Yeah.
It's like that hole in the wall bar that everybody kind of goes to, and everybody just chill and leaves each other alone. You've got these old dudes with gray beards down to their belt buckle, and then you've got, like, the 18, or I guess 21-year-old, or the 20-year-olds with fake IDs in there. Like, every walk of life is in there, and everybody just has so much fun. They have a pool table I've never seen the cover come off of. Yeah, but yeah, it's a good thing, and I always look forward to going, just because we just have a good time and just be dumb and goof around, right?
Right, and it's a good place too, because, like, for people who don't understand how big of an ordeal this is, like, they have off-duty cops that will shuttle us. So when we talk about getting sloshed and shit like that, we're getting shuttled back and forth from the zone car to our hotel, or we're taking an Uber. Like, nobody's driving.
No.
But like, all these off-duty cops and shit are watching out for us. as we're having a good time.
And they've got everybody, like the reach that this group has, or the event coordinators have. Like there's sheriff vans. Like I've been in one before where it's like the hard bench seats with like bars on the windows where they have to get out to let us out. But it's like a sheriff van because they just have a bunch of vehicles there. Just the sole purpose is to give you a ride so that everybody can enjoy themselves and be safe, right? And that's it. And it's super convenient because you just call up, the command post phone number and be like, hey, I'm at, the zone car, I'm at Tina's, I'm at downtown, whatever that thing by the water is called, and be like, I need a ride back to the hotel, and they'll pick you up. Or you're like, I need a ride down to the zone car, and they'll go pick you up and drop you off. It's like a taxi that's free. It's great. And they're always such nice people that drive too. They're always like either off duty or retired or whatever. Or sometimes they're on duty. We've had Cleveland police pull up because like we saw them in front of some bar and be like, hey, you guys headed to the zone car? Like, yeah, hop in. They'd jump in the cruiser and they'd fly us over. It was a good time.
So
you're right. Everybody just looks out for each other.
Right. And it's part of that community too. Like being a part of that community and the public safety. I know one of the big things you had messaged me about too is humanizing the badge too, and how important that was for you. Like people don't understand. I just don't know why there's a stigmatism with anybody that wears a badge or a uniform.
I think it's because
like sometimes
it's just like almost like everything. You look at like a restaurant online and there'll be like 100 bad reviews, right? So like how many restaurants have you gone to that you enjoyed and you left a positive review? Probably not many. But if there's one that you really thought was just awful, you'll probably leave a bad review, right? So you look at YouTube and it's full of just bad interactions with police from both, some officer that's not doing it the right way or the way that is normal to everybody else, even though from my understanding of the US, like counties have different rules than different counties or states and the way they operate, and laws in the US are all over the place. I don't get it. But and that's all you have, or you have like the person that's having the interaction that's just the worst person ever and it's making it really hard. But like there's no, hey, look how great this cop was with me on YouTube. It'll get like one view, and that's what it is. So everybody just sees cops as bad people. It's just like
nobody gets online and is like, man, I had a great interaction with police today. Like, it's like you said, you're only ever going to see the bad because it's what they want you to see, obviously.
Right, and that's what people want to see, and then that's what generates reactions and views, and humanizing the badge. Like, every job's got a bad apple, or every job's got someone that has a bad day, or it's, and especially with YouTube videos, so they get edited so that all you see is the end result, right? Like some dude getting ripped out of his car and be like, well, what happened beforehand? I find myself seeing these videos and I'm like, okay, cool. How did we get there?
Right. Yeah. We escalated super quickly, but how did we lead up to that point?
Right. Cause I'm like, and that's because of what I do and what I've done, that I can sit there and go, well, this doesn't make sense. Like something's missing here. Great video, by the way, but like it doesn't make sense. So I think that's a big part of why the badge is so seen as such a bad thing. Just like cuts, 100% the same thing, right? Like it's
we talked about it at Rendezvous. Like you see the cut and you immediately think of 1%ers or people that are out to do harm or something like that. But I mean,
you see a guy with
like
a Hawaiian shirt on a Harley, and you're gonna think Harley, big loud bike, bad guy, right? Like it's
right.
The bike has its own stigmatism. The cut itself has a stigmatism. Just a big burly dude has a bad stigmatism, right?
And I've even gotten that too. Like with people that I just met, they're like, you realize you're not the easiest guy just to come up and approach and talk to, right? And I'm like, I may understand that. Like, yeah, I can see where people would be like, yeah, this kind of guy doesn't really look like the kind of dude that I'd want to talk to every day. But they're like, you add the cut on top of it. And I like wearing, like, especially when I go out, I like wearing jewelry. I don't know what it is. I have a couple motorcycle rings I put on. I got a necklace that I like to wear. Like, it's not like a lot and it doesn't cost a lot, but like I don't know. It's just something about me and something about my personality that I like. I just like it. And they're like, you look at it and of course people are going to judge a book by its cover when it comes to those points. You know what I mean? But
plus you have no sleeves.
And I don't have sleeves. But they're like, then I talk to you or you finally find out who I am. And it's like you said, like, I'm probably one of the most understanding, nicest guys I feel like that most people would ever come across.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would agree. Like I got introduced to you, and then I'm just friendly with everybody because that's just how I am until I don't like you.
Right.
But I'm just friendly with everybody for the most part, and then so like I just kind of like I'll try and close that gap right away because if you're here with all of these people, you're a good dude. That's all. That's what I know.
Right. Yeah.
It's like if Corey's going to introduce me to somebody or Cody's going to introduce me to somebody or whoever, automatically good dude, or else you wouldn't introduce me, right? Like,
right.
hey, come meet this piece of shit. Like, probably not. So I get that.
So we talked a little bit about Cleveland, and we went back and through and visited that. Back to like who you are as a person. Do you have any pet peeves or things that really bother you? Like Corey's big thing was people whispering, and that blew my mind. I didn't know if you had any like pet peeves or something like that I don't know about you yet.
I don't really know. I have a really big problem with people that are just dumb, like complete
just
ignorance,
a lack of common
like,
sense.
Yeah, like man, and I and it's because of work. I think that's where it really came out. But because of work, because like it's common sense. Like if you're crossing a border, you have a passport, right? Makes sense. That's what everybody knows this. And like, and then people are like, oh, I need my passport. It's in my suitcase in my trunk. Like, well, like why? Like where have you been? Like just like that stuff. For like, yeah, I think a lot of that comes from work. That's like my biggest one. But I think that's about it. I pretty much just let shit go. I don't care.
I'm the same way too. You go to interview somebody or you talk to somebody, and they ask you, they're like, "Huh?" They ask you to repeat yourself because you already know. Oh, okay. You're waiting for me to repeat myself so you have more time to think of a lie that you're gonna fucking tell me anyways.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the point in even like? Why are we beating around the bush? I asked the guy today, like I saw him stealing something, and I go up to him and I'm like, just hand it over. He's like, what the fuck you talking about? I'm like, motherfucker, I sat here and watched you for 30 minutes. So I said, either A, we can play dumb, or B, you can just fucking give it to me and I'm not going to write you a ticket. He's like, so you're saying I should just cough it up, huh? I'm like, fucking yeah. Why would you make me work for this even harder? Like, I'm going to let you go. All you got to do is give it to me. He's like, okay. Yeah. And he just fucking coughed it out. And I said, now get the fuck out of here, dude. And he did. But it's like you said, like everybody plays you for a fucking idiot.
Yes. That took a long time to get used to, especially like with what I do, is being lied straight to my face. It was a learning curve. Like I get it now, but then now everybody's lying to me all the time, which is a bad part of that because I just assume everybody's lying about everything.
And then that's the thing. Like it's those things that you can't shut off once you've learned about it from your job. Like not sitting with your back to the wall. I get extremely uncomfortable in restaurants or stuff because my back's
absolutely.
Not like,
I never noticed.
It's like you said,
someone pointed it out.
And then with your work and everything, everybody you talk to, which it's unfortunate because you should be able to trust people and take somebody for their word, but in the profession that you and I work in, when you talk to somebody and they're a stranger to you and you immediately think this guy's fucking lying to me, like that's just something that your work taught you know what I mean? And you can't shut it off.
Yeah, and then you start asking, like, I met somebody. Oh, what was it? I was out with the wife somewhere the other day, and met somebody, and they were like telling me to say something, and I was just like asking valid, questions that made sense with the conversation we were having. And she looked at me and she's like, "Would you stop work grilling him?" And I was like, "Hey,
yeah,
I'm not. I'm genuinely interested."
Yeah,
but it's just it's a natural if I have a question, I'm just gonna ask it, and I don't have that filter anymore. That's kind of gone away because from work, right?
Right. Yeah, I'm super excited for this. It's technically a demotion for me. It's not a promotion; it's a demotion because it's a $1 pay cut. But for what I have to deal with now with being in maintenance and not have to do what I did before, I'm so excited to get ready for this fucking thing.
Right? Congratulations, man. This is the first time I've talked to you, I think, since. Yeah, you told me, you're like, oh, I got this new job. He's like, just listen to the podcast. So I did, and then I heard the whole story leading up to it. And it's cool. It's cool. At least it sucks that you're going to be on off schedule or not going to have the same days off at the beginning. But mental health wise, it's going to be huge.
Yeah, especially. I think it's going to help me. And even Kristen said too, my stress levels and stuff like that. She's like, I really think it's going to mellow you out again. And I'll be back on morning shifts like I was 3 years ago. So that'll be nice. Her and I are going to spend a lot more time together. So yeah, it'll be nice.
She seems like a very awesome chick too.
I'd love for her to come down.
Understanding.
like she said she would like to come down, or she would think about coming down with Rachel, but she's also like, she's like, that's a boys' weekend. Like, that's your guys' fucking thing. I don't want to really be a part of it. I'll just go to like have a good time for one night if you want me to. But like, she's not that. She is not. She's a social worker. Yeah. We just had this conversation fucking yesterday, which is super funny. But she's like, her job entails sitting down and talking with somebody one-on-one about their problems all fucking day. And then when I come home and I'm like, man, I haven't fucking seen you all day. Like we fell asleep talking to each other the night before. So like, I want to talk to you. And she's like, nothing against you, but she's like, I just don't want to fucking talk to anybody right now. And I completely understand where she's coming from. Like I have my bad days too, but you know, it's just, she's like not too much of a social butterfly when it comes to people like that. But she's like, I'll go if you really want me to. But she really is. She's a great person.
We've talked about, like, I've been obviously invited the wife to come, but then again, because she's such this weird, understanding abnormality of a person, she's like, no, it's a guy's thing. And plus, like, for us, it's not like it's just like, she can't just like drive down, hang out for the day, and go home either. It's a lot bigger of a trip.
It's tougher for you guys. I can understand that.
And then she's there for like 5 days. So at least for Kristen to come down, she could come down, try it out 1 year. And if she's like, you know what, I get it, it's not for me, then cool, she tried it. But be prepared, if she comes down and she likes it, she might want to come again. Rachel comes all the time now. She came down so that to get everybody's approval for Cody.
Right. He wanted everybody's approval. Because he had his bachelor party down in Cleveland.
Yeah, and then she came down and she was there. She's there for the day. We get onto this bus and she's so drunk, like just hammered. And Jeff throws her this bucket, and then we have this awesome picture of her just like head in the bucket, just hurling on the bus. It was like everybody's stamp of approval.
The Shooting Star story. That's where she got the nickname Shooting Star from.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
So I want you to tell everybody, you and I talked about like a funny story that I wanted you to share with people when you said you didn't know anything. If you don't have anything else, I want you to tell your perspective of that Cleveland story where you guys ended up in the industrial park.
Okay. Well, I have 2 stories for you. I'll tell you, what I really liked about your rendezvous ones was, who are you? Who are you? It's like, how'd you get your road name? Those were really cool. I actually really enjoyed hearing people's road names and how they came about. And then like tell us a funny story from work and whatever. So I've got one from work, but I'll tell you this industrial story, Uber story first. So sure. Another guy that comes with us to Cleveland of the 4 Canadians, his name's Nick. He works for the city in Ottawa. I don't know if I can say what he does, but I'll just leave it at that. So
sure. Yeah,
he works for the city in Ottawa. And so he came down, and he's been going forever with Dave, another Canadian guy, and Jeff. Dave and Jeff are very independent people and are very not easy to convince to do something you want to do. Like if they don't want to do it, they're just not going to do it. So Nick's kind of been, if he wants to do something, he's on his own, right? So when I started going, me and Nick kind of clicked right away because, yeah, I'll just do whatever, right? And we were kind of both the same way. So we're leaving the zone car. We already called an Uber, and there was a shuttle that came. We thought the shuttles were done because they do end at a certain time. And when the zone car closes, I think there's one last one, and that was it. There was a whole group of people outside waiting for the shuttle. So we called an Uber. And then you guys all came out and you're like, hey, we have an Uber coming. Just jump in with us. Like, we got our own. We'll just jump in. It's more comfortable. Who cares? It's already here. So we jump in. And I'm sitting behind the driver. Nick's next to me in the back seat. And only thing I see is like the Uber driver kind of puts his hand up to change on the GPS, whatever. And he's got black nail polish. He's a skinny white kid. He's got a black wife beater on and black nail polish. And I'm like, okay, whatever. Didn't think twice about it. So we're kind of like shooting the shit with this guy. Like just like, I think he asked us something about whatever. And then we just got to talking. So this guy, he lives in Texas or lived in Texas. He owns this vehicle that he has, and he got bored. So he went somewhere else. And then he got bored there, and then he goes and gets an apartment for like 4 or 6 months in a different city, drives Uber, meets people, and that's just kind of what he does. When he gets bored of Cleveland, he'll move on to somewhere else. So he's in Cleveland for the time, and we're heading back towards the hotel. And I guess on his map, as we're going down the road, there's the left turn to the hotel. And he's just like, oh, you guys are going to the hotel. We're like, yeah, like, I thought you would know where you were going, right? Like you'd think. I guess he's just following the map, which is fine too. So he's like, I thought you guys were going to the raves in the industrial park. We're like, so I look at Nick, and Nick kind of looks at me. I'm like, what raves? Like, I've been to raves when I was like in my early 20s, and I had a ton of fun because I just go out to have fun, have some drinks, and just party, like dance like an idiot and have fun, right? So, like, what raves? And he's like, well, there's this WhatsApp group, and you only ever find out where this place is if you're a part of that group. But someone that has to be able to vouch for you has to invite you to that group. And he's like, so once in a while, I'll find out about it because I'm driving somebody there. So I was like, well, where are they? And he's like, it changes all the time. They just like rent some industrial warehouse space for like the night, have this big party, and then it's somewhere different. And I was like, I'm disappointed because that sounds like a great time, and I've had some drinks. And he's like, you guys want to like, go for a ride and see if we can find it? So I'm like, absolutely. And then I look at Nick, and then Nick kind of looks at me like, what are you doing? I'm like, dude, it'll be fun. Who cares? Let's go, right? And he's like, okay. He's like, I'll just pull into the hotel so I can end the trip. And he's like, and I'll just take you guys. I'm like, well, how are we going to get home though? Right? And I'm like, can we just like call you and you can come pick us up? And he's like, well, I'll come in with you. And I was like, well, that fucking works.
That's
right?
fucking crazy.
And he's like, when you guys are ready to go, just let me know. So we're like, okay, let's go. So we're driving through the industrial park, and like he's going down these back lanes, and he's just like it's like 2 a.m. on like a Saturday night.
It was probably 2 a.m. because we closed down the zone car. We went to Tina's.
Yeah.
And we come back from Tina's to grab another beer at the zone car, and that was our last call.
Yeah.
So we grabbed the neighbor and we went back to the hotel. So it was about 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning.
Right. So like the industrial area is dead. There's nothing there. So then I turn to Nick, and Nick turns to me, and he's like, we're totally getting raped out here, right?
Oh, yeah. Like, this guy's got serial killer vibes anyways.
So then the guy's like, no, you guys are good. So he heard us, which made it way worse. So he turns this corner, and there's just cars lining the road. He's like, yes, we found it. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. Instantly not worried anymore because I know I'm getting out. So we show up, and there's like this like neon green door, like backlit neon green door. He's like, yeah, I'll park. And he's like, whenever you guys want to leave, let me know, and then we'll just take off. He's like, I don't care. And we're like, I don't have any cash. I'm like, do you have to pay a cover? He's like, don't worry. Like, I know enough people that I'm sure I can just get us in. So I was like, okay. So this is the first time I actually see this guy. He probably had a whole lot of hard years on some hard drugs. Like, had he gotten out to like open my door when I got there, there is a 0% chance I would have gone anywhere except for my hotel. So, like, the guy was nice. We're already here. You know what? Whatever. Let's go have some fun. So we went in, and I had a great time. But then I was Snapchatting you guys, and then I think it was Corey that messaged me. He's like, "Where the fuck are you guys?" Right? And I'm like, "Oh my god, I'm at some."
Yeah, because we thought you guys were in a neighbor behind us heading back to the hotel.
Right? Yeah, it was such a good time. But that's like the magic of Cleveland. Like, I probably won't do it again because it'll never be as fun or as like wild. But it was a good time. Like, that's what happens when you go to Cleveland. Like, I'll just say yes. Like, let's go. Let's have fun. Let's just see where the night takes us, and that's where that night took us.
Yep, it's all about the Cleveland experience.
That's it. Yeah, and it made for a great story. So
what about this work story? What do you got for work?
All right. So for the most part, like most Canadian cities are near a border, and for the most, like almost a lot of Canadian cities are near a border. A lot of Canadians go down to the magical Disneyland that is America, right? Because America's so big and it's so much stuff and it's so much cheaper and everything for us, right? So everybody I know, like every time I say I'm like, yeah, I work for the border, everybody has a story. Everybody, like, oh, I went once and they did this, or my uncle's brother's nephew's second removed did this and this is what happened and whatever, right? And I'm like over it. So I always refer to this one story because it was like, it blew me away, and now I get to tell people, and to me it's like another day at the office, but it always blows people away. So it's my favorite story to tell. So I was newer still, and I'm working at I was sitting in the booth. It's coming towards the end of my hour, and I have this van pull up, and it's Mr. and Mrs. Smith, like a couple. They're driving a minivan. So I'm like, hey, how long were you gone? And they're like, just under 6 months. Oh shit, where'd you guys go? Like, where'd you drive, or did you fly somewhere? Right. They're like, no, we went to Mexico. We have a house down there. We drive down, we spend 6 months in Mexico for the winter, and then we come back snowbirds. Just they drive. And I was like, oh, okay. So I'm like, so I go through all my questions, and one of the questions we asked is like, did you purchase or acquire any goods outside of Canada? Like, what do you have coming in? And they're like, I think we bought a bottle of tequila and that's it. Still being new, I'm like, how do you go to Mexico for 6 months and you only bought a bottle of tequila? Like, I don't believe you, right? Like, I go down for a weekend and spend like $2,000. Like, how? Right? So, because it was the end of my, like, close to the end of my hour on the road, I sent them in to verify what they had told me at the booth. So when you make a declaration at the booth, like, I've got no guns, I've got no drugs, I've got no whatever, we write it down on a piece of paper. That is like, it's concrete. That's what goes to court, right? If it was to go to court. So they go into secondary, they get pulled in, and we go and look. And if it varies anything, like, obviously, if you said you bought one bottle and there's a bottle and a half, like, whatever, there's discretion. But if it varies from what you've told us at the booth, that's when, you know, penalties or seizures or whatever happen. So I sent them in. I get relieved out in the booth, so I go inside, and they're sitting, like, they just walk in. So I'll take my own exam. So they come up, and I'm like, hey, I'm just going to grab your keys, anything I need to know, whatever. So I go out and check the car. So me and another officer go out to check, because we typically always go in twos, unless we're short staffed, which is all the time. But we always go in twos. So I'm behind the passenger seat. He's behind the driver's seat. We have this sliding doors open, and, you know, like stow and go seating where the seat folds into the floor.
Yeah.
So this hole has everything stuffed into it. So I'm digging through, and I come across this paper bag filled with crunched up pieces of newspaper. So I lift it out, and it's like kind of heavy. So I lift it out and I put it on the thing, and I'm like, who packs this way, right? Like, I pull out a piece of newspaper. It's just a bunch of loose pieces of newspaper just crumpled up, like, just piled on top. So I'm pulling it out, and then there's like a file folder, and he's like, the guy I'm with looks at me. He's like, what is this? I'm like, I don't know. So I give him the file folder, and I don't find out what's in this bag. Pull it out, and I pull out this like 1 liter plastic, like a takeout soup container you would get from like a soup, like a Chinese food restaurant with soup in it.
Yeah.
Normally they're kind enough to put a piece of saran wrap and then the lid on top, right? So it doesn't leak. This thing is like, we got gloves on, but this thing's like oily, and like inside it's this dark brown color with like these gray, like a big thick gray thing inside. I don't know what this is. I'm looking at it and I'm like, what on earth? Like, turning it around, trying to figure out what it is. The guy I'm with is going through this file folder, and he's like, dude, put that down. So I'm like, put it down? I'm like, what is it? And he goes, what's these people's names? I'm like, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. And he's like, are you sure it's not like Cunningham? And I'm like, no. So he gives me this piece of paper, and I look at it. It's 28 centimeters of human intestines.
Oh my God.
Yeah. From a dude named like Mr. Cunningham or whatever. It's a letter from a hospital in Mexico validating that this is 28 centimeter, like this medical thing that happened. So it turns out, so we go to, like, in their van, they've got empty coolers. Like, just like a cooler you would put, like, I don't know, a bowl of soup in, empty, in their vehicle. But they had to put it into, like, this paper bag. So you go inside, and I'm like, who's Mr. Cunningham? To, like, these people that are coming across. And they're just like, oh, right. Like, I forgot. I'm like, how do you forget? Like, you have human intestines like, you just in your forgot. Car? So it turns out this guy is, like, their neighbor here in Canada, and they are neighbors in Mexico. And he was like, he had some stomach problems. We went to the hospital, and the insurance in Canada wanted to make sure, because a lot of people go down just to get surgery because it's cheaper. The insurance in Canada wanted to make sure that his surgery in Mexico was out of necessity, not out of convenience. So the hospital was like, I don't know how, like, we sent them a letter. What else do they want? And he's like, the doctor apparently goes to the patient, this Cunningham guy, and goes, here, give him this, as like a big fuck you, right? So this guy flew down and flew back. He's like, I don't know how I'm going to transport this on the airplane. You guys are driving. Can you just bring this back for me? And they're like, yeah, sure. And just threw it in their car and thought nothing of it.
Oh my God, that's wild.
I'll send you a picture of it. It's gross. But like we see
I couldn't
guns.
Imagine.
We see guns, drugs. We come across a lot of child pornography. Unfortunately, we deal with like violent criminals. We deal with murderers that got out like a week ago and they're fleeing. Like we deal with a lot of stuff. Human smugglers. We deal with a lot of that stuff. And this is like the one thing that I'm just like, this is wild. Like, you see enough drugs, you don't care anymore. Like, we see enough guns that we don't care anymore. But like this, I'm just like, this never happens. Like, what is this? Body parts. It's another day at the office.
I just now got your text message. You wanted me to remind you. I hate that we got so far away from it. I wish I would have saw it earlier. But tell me about your motorcycle trip that you just took, because you took a huge ass motorcycle trip.
I did. So I love my bike. Every year, my father-in-law, our neighbor, his brother, always go on a motorcycle trip ever since I got a bike. And every year, somebody's bike has a problem. Mine was the first year, and then somebody else's next year. There always seems to be some issue that comes up. But so we had a plan, or I had booked time off. I have to put my time off for summer because it's such a high volume. People want time off. It goes by seniority. I've put in like April. So I had this block of like 10 days off in July. July. And none of these other guys could make it. Everybody's retired, yet everybody's got stuff that they can't make time work. So I'm trying to figure out, I'm like, where do I go? I've got 10 days. What do I do? So I talked to some people at work, and I figured, I'm going to see how many states I can get in like a week. So living in British Columbia, I planned out this trip, and I figured I'd just use Google Maps, 5-6 hours a day sounds about right. If I stop and want to see stuff, like I still need to get to my next destination, either set up a tent or check into a hotel or whatever I'm doing that night. So I planned out this trip, and I did it and came back. Nothing broke. Everything went great. It was hot as balls. It was 108 in Washington when I went through it, which is like wildly hot. There was forest fires, road closures. It was crazy. So I went from here, like Vancouver, let's just say, Vancouver to this place called Grand Coulee. It's a big dam in eastern Washington. I went from there. I went through the Hanford Project, where they make like nuclear bombs and stuff, down to Oregon. I stayed in Baker City, Oregon. Then I went down to Wells, Nevada, Salt Lake City, Utah, Yellowstone National Park, Missoula, Montana, and then back up home. It was a 2,800 miles in 7 days.
That's wild.
I did realize, though, that 6 hours on GPS is based, I guess, in a car without stops, and realized that stops on a bike take a lot longer than stops in a car. So 6 hours on 6 hours on the map is like 8 hours on a bike, which makes for a really freaking long day.
So I saw that you don't have like obviously there's some nights where you plan on staying at a hotel, but there's other nights you're just like, fuck it and pitch a tent somewhere.
So I had booked everything ahead of time because there's a lot of campsites and stuff that like first come, first serve, but like I don't have time. Like, not that I don't have time, but like if I get somewhere and there's nothing available, I gotta like plan on the fly. And that means more time on the bike and a little bit more stress when I don't want it. So I planned everything ahead. So when I went to Washington, the route I had planned to take that was not an interstate, because it's boring to sit on a bike on an interstate for hours. So I was going to take something that was a little bit more twisty, windy, and a little bit more fun. That road closed because of wildfires that were happening in Washington. So I'd take a different route, which was just as nice. I got to this little town called Leavenworth, Washington. It's like this old Bavarian town. It's pretty cool. I get there, but like my eyes are burning from the smoke in the air. And I check my map, and the road I'm supposed to use to go up to my campsite was closed because of the fire. So the detour was like an hour and a half. And I was like, I'm going to miss the tours of the dam. And I was like, you know what, whatever. So I got a hotel that night. My second day, I was supposed to stay at a campsite. So my intention was to camp the entire way. But on my second night, my campsite was on fire. Like the whole campground is gone. It burnt everything. So I stayed at an Airbnb. And then it was campsites everywhere else, except for Salt Lake. Salt Lake, I got an Airbnb. That was the intention at the very beginning, just because I've never been to Salt Lake City. And I really wanted to like look around, and it's easier just to like drop my bag and go ride around and check it out. I got a Lime scooter, which was awesome because I love these Lime scooters. It's also a huge reason why I like to go back to Cleveland, because it's the only time I get to ride Lime scooters. But yeah, so in Salt Lake is the only time I was supposed to stay in a hotel, but everything else was supposed to be camping except for these wildfires, because apparently I planned it during the hottest time of the year.
That's crazy.
It was a good time though, man. It's so much fun. It felt a lot like just riding all day, sleeping, riding all day, sleeping, riding all day, sleeping. But I got, I sent home a postcard from every state I was in. So like I got to, well, not Washington because Washington's like next door, but so Oregon. So I like wrote a postcard to the wife and mailed it to her. And then I did it for like all the states I went through. And then I got a sticker, like a bumper sticker kind of thing that reminded me the most of the state I was in, that I'm slowly going to start covering my saddlebags on. Nice. With just like states that or wherever I've been with that bike. So I'll just cover my whole bags with stickers, and I'm pretty excited about that.
I don't have any stickers. That's what I need to get. I need to get some stickers made of the Let's Get Wobbled podcast shit. But I've got like business cards and magnets and shit like that. And I need to get some stickers made so I can get you some merch.
Where do you sell them?
So I don't sell them anywhere just because I don't really have. The only thing I have is like 8 or 9 magnets left that I was giving away to people just as like advertisement shit. I don't have a store or anything set up. I've thought about it, but I just don't know. I don't know.
It's a lot to put out. It's weird because you'd have to, let's say you buy like 100 magnets and then you want to sell them, but then you end up with 100 magnets.
Right.
And it's kind of a lot of money to put out in the beginning, at least. We'll just wait till somebody picks you up and sponsors you. Vistaprint, if you're listening, you should probably sponsor this guy.
Vistaprint, Speedy Prints. I use all those from like pictures that I have here at the house. So I need to hook them up and let them know that I'm out here doing this shit.
Yeah.
So just to kind of wrap up the interview a little bit, one last thing that I wanted to ask, and I think it's funny, not only funny, but like it's good to pick somebody's brain too with this question. And I asked one of my real good friends at work, Stevens, we sat down and had a deep conversation about it. But so with you being the age you are now, if you could go back and tell your 20-year-old self something, and if you could give yourself any kind of advice of what you know now, what would you tell yourself back then?
Oh man, I don't know. I'd probably tell myself like stand up for myself a little bit more and like not accept lesser because it is what it is. I did a lot of that. That was my entire marriage the first year, like my first one. I've only been married once, but like that was my entire marriage. Like, I went to like therapy. Like, so I went to therapy. I go to therapy now. I'm a huge advocate for that shit. Like mental health.
Yeah, you and I talked about that when I was telling you I was going through therapy and stuff.
Yeah, and when you had that podcast about it, like about the mental health one, like that, like if I could put it on a PA and blast it everywhere, I would. Like it's so. I'm a huge advocate for that. But when I went through it, the person that I dealt with at the time explained it really well. It was like, you think about like this big boulder out in like, I don't know, like the forest or whatever, and there's like a constant drop of water on it forever and ever and ever. Eventually it starts wearing into the rock and making a big groove in the rock, right? Because it's just a drop of water, but over time you form it to what you want. And that was that. And I learned a lot from that. And I'm not happy about it, but like, I'm also like, I appreciate having that experience where it taught me my own, like my worth a little bit. You know what I mean?
That's right. It's a life lesson that you went through.
It was a hard one, but yeah. So I think that's what I would tell myself, not in hopes to avoid it, but more just in like the hopes to like, just as like stand up and just like let your like, just don't accept it. Like now I don't accept shit like from anybody ever, but for the most part, right. but like I think that's the biggest one was like, I wish I would have done that more instead of just being like, oh, it's okay. And then like, no, whatever, maybe next time. And like just letting yourself down all the time. Right. That was a big one. Yeah. That just like probably had more fun. Buy a house like 20 years ago.
That's how mine ties in. Like I would tell myself, you know, like I knew it when I was a kid, but at the same time, like, don't be afraid to try new things. Yeah. And you only live this life one time. You only get one chance at this.
Yeah.
So like, don't be afraid to, it's like Cleveland. That's one of the big things. Like I tried Cleveland. It was new for me. And, you know, don't be afraid to let go and live your life and do those things that you're not going to get to do every day of the week. You know, if something special comes up or a new opportunity comes around and you're thinking about trying it, like definitely give it a shot. Now, it's not saying that it's going to be great every time. Like I've done a lot of shit and I'm like, you know what? That's just not fucking for me. That was awful. But you know, I tried it.
That's why I'm not an Olympic swimmer. It wasn't for me.
I had a conversation. It's funny that you mentioned that. I had a conversation with a buddy of mine. We were talking about what Olympic sport they thought would be the easiest to compete in.
Trampoline.
And I was like, we're all talking about it because the Olympics are going on. I'm like,
yeah,
there's a lot. Like, it takes a lot of skill. Don't get me wrong, to be involved in anything that you do with the Olympics. Like, these guys are professionals.
Yeah, absolutely.
But as a joke, I was like, I think Olympic diving wouldn't be too hard. And my buddy did a huge spit take with his water. And he's like, are you fucking serious? I was like, yeah, I think I could like dive. I was like, it's just basically your goal is not to make a big splash. He's like, two things. One, I couldn't see your big fucking ass in a Speedo, period. And B, he said, your big ass is making the biggest splash in this pool. And I was like, yeah, you're probably right.
That's the first. I didn't even think about the Speedo, but yeah, that's exactly it. Oh man. Yeah, I'd rock at trampoline though.
That's great.
I didn't even know it was an Olympic sport. I saw it on TV.
The flips and shit and all of it. You got all of it down, huh?
I'm like, oh yeah. You just bounce really high, especially if I have somebody else there to help bounce me.
Right.
Higher. Yeah.
Call somebody over real quick. Hey, hang on. I need assistance over here on that.
Yeah. I just need somebody to give me a bigger bounce. Come on, help me out. Yeah. Or I'd be there like throwing dish soap on the other guy's trampoline so they slip and fall.
Yeah.
You win by default.
Well, buddy, listen, I really appreciate you giving this a shot. I know it's super different probably if you've never done an interview or podcast like this. A lot of people say they're super nervous about it the first time they do it, and then they realize it's just a conversation with you and I, but
yeah,
I really appreciate you coming out and doing it. I hope that my guests really love the content that we put out, and I hope that they get something out of it, whether it's just a good laugh or something that they take away. But thanks for being such a great person. I appreciate you for who you are.
Thank you for having me on, man. Like, I'm actually super happy to be able to support the podcast and help out and do whatever I can. But like some podcasts bring something different, and like some of your podcasts bring something different every time I listen to it. All of them make me laugh. I love the Rendezvous one. That would make me laugh, and I learned a bunch of stuff. The one with Playboy, I learned a lot about him. Known him for years, know nothing about him. Right? So, like, I appreciate what you're doing and what you do, and appreciate you as a person too. You're a good dude.
And so what we're going to do is we're going to end the podcast just like I do with a lot of the guests that I have. Mm-hmm. I'm going to say until next time, you're going to say stay wobbled.
Of course. I was waiting for
it. So this is the part. This is the time now. So thank you guys again for listening to episode 9. Stay tuned for episode 10. I don't have anything planned out, but I'm sure we're going to get some guest on. We're going to try to figure out some way to get somebody on to do something. But until next time, guys.
Stay wobbled.
Thanks, buddy. Have a good one.
See you, man.